We are going to stay in the Midwest. Obviously, this was Miami of Florida's region that they won. The Hurricanes are 29-7. I will say this: Miami of Florida had by far the hardest route to get through the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight rounds. The Hurricanes took down top seed in the Midwest, Houston, and they also took down second seed Texas in the Elite Eight. I tell you what, if there are any neutral fans in Houston, Texas, they will not be cheering for the Miami Hurricanes, as of course, we had the hometown Houston Cougars. Their ticket was ripped up. And then
Mhm.
of course Texas would have been a huge fan favorite in that Final Four. Hurricanes took care of them as well. The Hurricanes, of course, will face the Huskies of UConn on Saturday in the semifinals. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on the Midwest Regional?
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at that portion of the bracket right now, and yeah, Houston, I'm still kind of stunned that they went out as early as they did. I saw them definitely going to the eight, probably the four. If they would have won the whole thing, it wouldn't have surprised me. But again, it's that same thing. It's what we talk about. It's football, it's basketball, it's any given game. It's a 6 game season when we get to this tournament, and that's what happened here. Houston gets past Auburn, they run up against Miami, and they lose by 14 points. That's just astounding to me. That's just like San Diego State handling Alabama the way they did. There's a lot of surprise factor right there. But Miami's out there. They're out. They took care of one. They took care of two, and they're moving on. Hats off to Texas and Xavier. They had a great game. Of course, Texas won by a dozen points, but still, Xavier to make it as far as they did, even though they were a 3 seed, I thought they had a good tournament, and they'll be strong again next year.
Yeah, it was a very interesting one. I think the most, I don't know if chalkiest is a word, but I'm going to pretend it is, but it was. There was a lot of chalk on this, especially compared to the other regions. And Miami was kind of that team that just busted through that and said, "Yeah, you might have a one or two in the Sweet 16 Elite Eight, but we're going to take care of that real quick." Coach, what are your thoughts on the Midwest Regional?
I didn't have Miami getting past Kent State early, and then they make this amazing run. And I'm like, this is a team that backdoored into the tournament, had won the regular season ACC, didn't do too well down the stretch, but still strong enough. I guess I kind of forgot midway through or up until the tournament, good old trusty Coach Larinaga down there just knows how to coach his guys up, knows how to adapt styles, know how to make the right adjustments to every given opponent that they faced. And look where they're at. They're in the Final Four. Yeah, probably the toughest road, like you said. I mean, having to beat Houston, having to beat Texas, and I guess it just shows. I think this team more than any other team shows positionless basketball. I mean, they run these the NBA style sets, and they all could have this ability to score. And he opens up the floor, and we all saw down 16 with 7 minutes left, makes this adjustments to open up the floor against Texas, and then all of a sudden, balls start dropping into the net, and they're celebrating and dancing going into Houston this weekend. So. Um, Great run for Miami. I myself would love to see them get through, just because a really dear friend of mine went to Miami, and I'm a fan of hers, and uh, she's an alum, so there's that connection. So I would like to see Miami come through and go from there. And man, they got a challenging task ahead with probably the most physically imposing, the most highly offensive scoring, and probably the most fiery of all coaches in this Final Four, in Danny Hurley. Um, moving forward or next up in this Final Four round. So it'll be an
Yeah.
interesting matchup to see.
I definitely, I mean, obviously, congratulations to Miami. But I definitely want to shout out Jim Larinaga. This is a
Yeah.
guy who, kind of burst onto our scene, or at least our peripherals, a few years back with George Mason. And look,
Yes.
as unexpected as the Miami Hurricanes are being in the Final Four, when he took George Mason to the Final Four, that was Cinderella all the way through. We've seen plenty of 16, or well, not plenty, but we've seen plenty of high seeds take down lower seeds in the first round of the tournament, but we don't see them progress. Well, George Mason was kind of that first team, maybe besides Butler, but Butler I think was a little different because they had such star power. But to see George Mason do that, and now to see Jim Larinaga back there, and one of the best things I've learned about Jim Larinaga as a head coach, and something I think more coaches should embrace, is he doesn't call timeouts to stop momentum. He doesn't call timeouts to settle players down. He calls timeouts to make adjustments or to get certain players in the game. It's the only time he's going to call a timeout. So you're down, this 12-0 run for the other team. Jim Larinaga, as if he has the five guys that he thinks is going to get the job done, you got to play out of it. And I think that's something that we really need to see more of. And I think that has been a big reason why we see Miami where they are now, especially considering the adversity they had to go through in that Elite Eight game, where it seemed like they were down by double digits and you blink and they won the game. It was really an incredible coaching performance, not just this weekend, but really for the whole career of Jim Larinaga. I think this has kind of stamped his Hall of Fame resume, at least in my book. Ideally, he can get the job done, and I would love to see him. I mean, he's my second pick of coaches that deserve it at this Final Four, but he definitely does deserve to be picking up that trophy on Monday. But we shall see, as he's got a huge test ahead of him in UConn, which is the perfect segue into our final